Debby Newslow, a native of Needham, Massachusetts, is president of D.L. Newslow and Associates, located in Orlando, Florida. Newslow is the author of the ISO 9000 Quality System, Applications in Food and Technology, released by John Wiley & Sons Publishing in February 2001. He also authored a Tacit-based chapter included in the 2003 John Wiley & Sons release of the Food Safety Compendium. In 2013, she completed her second book, Food Safety Management Programs, Applications, Best Practices, and Compliance, published by CRC Press and Taylor and Francis. Debbie, take it away.
Thank you, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about food safety management programs, some of the requirements, challenges, and strategies are for effective implementation. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time focusing on what we like to call a three-legged stool, and we'll talk more about that and how that fits in operation and the pros and cons. Understanding the terminology, this is important, but it's not actually critical. You know, some people refer to your programs a food safety management plan or a food safety management program, and some say it's a food safety management system. A system is basically all encompassing your whole operation from receiving right through distribution and sometimes into sales, where a plan, a program, or process may be a subsection of that. But it's all just terminology that just depends on the operation, and it isn't a go, no-go on what you're actually doing internally with your operation. Now, GFSI-approved food safety schemes, or what they're called today, Certified Program Owners, CPOs. These are a set of food safety programs that focus on food safety, and they've been approved by the GFSI, what we call benchmark approved. And GFSI has its own guidelines. It looks at these schemes or these CPOs to see if they meet their guidelines. If they do, then they recognize them as one of their GFSI approved schemes or CPOs. These would include programs such as SQF, FSSC 22000, BRC, IFS, and the others, the GAP, the Primus. There's several on their list. So that's basically what this terminology refers to. Now, basically our focus is on continuous improvement. Plan, Do, Check, Act. The Plan, Do, Check, Act has been around for a very, very long time. Stems all the way back to the Deming era, when we look at our operations and how we're going to improve on them, where we evaluate, we plan, we confirm we have resources, then we get out there and actually do whatever it is we're doing. We monitor or check it through our measurable objectives, through our goals and so forth. And then once we monitor and see how well we're doing, whether we need more resources or whatever, then we act on that. So it's really a circular motion. You plan, do, check, act, and then you go back and plan, do, check, act again. And it's really focuses on continuous improvement. And it's been around for a long time, and it's very effective. So what must be planned? We must look at our food safety policy, what we're saying in our food safety policy statement. And this generally is a commitment by top management and the company to identify what they want to accomplish. And for instance, we're going to produce a safe product of high quality and delivering to our customers on time and in spec. That could be a statement, but then next question would be measurable objectives. How do we measure? So if we say we're going to be the best, how do we measure the best? We can't improve unless we have something measurable. So the food safety policy is established, and then we identify objectives that are measurable or targets that affect it, that release, that focus on us accomplishing what we set out to accomplish. And we can do this with processes and procedures relevant to managing risk and improving food safety. So this is really our focus, and it's pieces of the puzzle that we'll put together and come out with success, basically. So what are we going to do? Implement and operate the food safety policy, the controls, the process, and the procedures. Implement. We check our measurements, assess and measure process performance against food safety policy, measurable objectives, and practical experience. We use internal audits and our CAPA, or corrective action, preventive action programs, to help identify where we are, where we need to go, are there opportunities for improvement. Are there nonconformances that need to be addressed in a timely manner based on risk? And then all of this is reported and evaluated to our top management at our management review meetings. We act on our findings. We take corrective and preventive actions based on the results of the management review or any of our other activities. And this is applied to achieve and focus on continuing improving of the system. It's vital because it includes top management as an integral part of the system. Top management must be involved. They must walk the talk. So additional key requirements: establish, document, maintain a food safety and/or a quality management system that complies with the requirements of your choice, of your standard of choice or your scheme. Certain key requirements are common to all management system standards. So this presentation is really going to focus on key requirements that are more or less will help you no matter which standard you choose, whether it's, SQF, 22000, BRC. It just depends. I mean, we have our preferences, but again, we also have systems that actually focus on specific angles. So we might recommend one over another. But basically, these key requirements will go a long way in helping establish, maintain an effective system. Documentation is key. Even though some of the standards as they are being revised don't require as many controlled documents and records, that documentation will always be a key aspect of an effective system. So it includes controlled documents and records as required by the standard of choice, by regulatory authorities, and internal organization requirements, such as customer requests, corporate standards, procedures, and documents that you feel like you need to have written down so that everybody follows them. Key points to consider when we're looking at documentation, and something that we see a lot of are issues when employees do not have access. You must ensure that documents are readily available at the point of use if they're so needed. They may not be needed, but if they are, they need to be readily available at the point of use. Be careful not to over-document. A lot of systems, especially some of the ones that have been established for quite a while, tend to have a lot of different documents, You need what you need, but you have to be careful that you don't over-document, because you can strangle your system. As this next bullet says, documents are not always the answer. External documents are key. Many companies will forget to identify those. Those are the documents that you need to operate your operation, but that you don't create and have control over. Such as you might have a document that you state a pH meter will be standardized according to the owner's manual. Now you've just required yourself to have the owner's manual as an external document, because you say you're going to do it according to the owner's manual, so you can't do it if you don't have it. Those are external documents that need to be identified and controlled. And records are a special kind of document, and we'll talk about records as we move forward. When you're looking at records, what do we need to know about records? Records we recommend that you maintain a master list of all the records, and in this list, you would identify the record, of course, unique identification, who's responsible, where it is kept or maintained, how it's stored. It could be stored electronically or hard copy. And retention time, what is the minimum amount of time that you will keep these, and then what is the process for disposition, so that you can organize your records. Because without records, you can't prove that you did what you need to do. I tell people, with God, we trust, everyone else bring records. You've got to have your records, you've got to have it recorded. And when you do record the information on the records, in today's world with the new laws and everything, you need to record the actual values. You don't just put pass, fail, or a check mark, but the actual value of the record, so you can confirm that it's compliant. This is a chart that I've used for years and years and years. And it really talks about documentation. It says as little as possible, but as much as necessary. If we apply common sense and structure, we'll be in the quality zone. Without either one, we'll have mindless chaos. Anybody that's been around for any length of time in any industry has experienced mindless chaos. So really the focus is that you need what you need, as little as possible, but as much as necessary. Audit survival tips. One thing that we always stress, and this also relates to documentation, is that auditors are constantly looking for documents that are not controlled but should be. So we might say, how do you know how to do this, or where do you go to look this up? And they'll pull out something, and it's not a controlled document. Anything that is needed for the successful operation of your process must be controlled. We also may see things hanging on the wall or easy prey, like for instance, a memo or something that has said, from now on, we need to do this. If it's something that they need to do their job, then it needs to be a controlled document. I'll ask folks, can I take it with me? Will you be able to do what you need to? And that's the key. If they need the document, then it should be a controlled document. Records must be maintained to show compliance to all specified requirements. Retention time is sometimes identified by the standard of choice or by the regulation. However, be sure that you keep them as long as you need to demonstrate conformance. If you say you calibrate a particular instrument annually and then you only keep the record for 1 year, then you can't prove that you're doing what you say you're doing. Records are necessary to demonstrate compliance and effectiveness of the food safety management system. You've got to have records to show that you've done what you said you were going to do. Without the record, then you pretty much never did it. And if you ever had to go to court, you'd be up the creek without a paddle. Now here's the three-legged stool that I mentioned earlier. The legs of the stool are held in balance through effective management review process, effective internal audits, and effective corrective and preventive actions. I have seen systems that have been horrible systems that were very faltering or had not really ever been totally implemented. And I've seen them when management has strengthened these three processes, and those systems have grown and become excellent, viable, continuing improving in everything. I've also seen the reverse, unfortunately, where I've seen some very good systems that self-destructed faster than I ever thought they could, based on one or just one. I mean, late audits or corrective actions that were not being maintained, they start to falter. So these are really the strength. These are the heart and soul of your operation. So let's talk about management responsibility. Top management must demonstrate the development, proper application, and ongoing improvement of the system. It must include food safety, quality in the organization's business measurable objectives. In other words, the business objectives that are measurable. Must ensure compliance with all regulatory requirements, assure that all associates understand their roles in food safety and the management system. We will ask an employee, what role do you play in food safety? And they should be able to tell us that what role they play in food safety in every position, whether they're mopping the floors or loading trucks or anything in between, they have a role in food safety. Also, management must schedule and conduct effective management review meetings. During these meetings, they must ensure that when they identify their objectives and they monitor how well they're doing, that they have resources to accomplish these goals. And resources can be training, can be people, can be equipment, can be money. Whatever they need to make sure they have it in order to achieve what they need to achieve. So who is top management? It's really defined as the management who, by some of the schemes, it's the top management of the facility within the scope. And this group and this individual, and sometimes it's a team with top management, with the person of top management, such as the president or general manager, and their direct reports. But they lead the management of a continually improving system. They have to define the overall strategy, and they must walk the talk. They can't just sit there and say it's important and then not demonstrate that importance. It's important to understand that the success of the overall organization and the requirements of an organized food safety management system depends on visible commitment from top management. Management review is key. Some of the standards will tell you what they recommend for the frequency, I always recommend at least quarterly. Maybe you don't look at all of the aspects quarterly, but when you try to do a management review annually, a lot can happen in a year's time. The meetings must evaluate the health of the system. Is the system adequate? The adequacy, does it fulfill the system requirements? Continually suitable to your operation and effective? Is it sufficiently robust to repeatedly assure the desired outcome? Results of the management review meetings must be maintained as records to confirm the suitability, effectiveness, and continued improvement of the system. We urge that there is a conclusion statement, because the standards would say you must have management reviews to evaluate the suitability and effectiveness of the system. So when you get all through reviewing that, there should be a statement that says, based on our review, the system is blank. It could be robust, it could be faltering, and what are you going to do about it, and so forth. But this is a key. Policy statement. We mentioned that earlier. Employees representing all levels of your organization must understand the food policy, where it's posted, what it means, and how his or her responsibility relates to it. We don't require that mostly they are not required to recite it word for word, but they do need to understand their role in achieving it. Generally speaking, auditors are very consistent. They consistently conduct random surveys from employee population, asking them if they have an understanding of the food safety system or the food safety and quality system and how it affects them. Internal audits are designed such that auditors are independent of the area that they are auditing. Auditors must not audit their own work. Management responsible for the areas being audited are required to take corrective action to address findings effectively and in a timely manner based on the potential risk. Follow-up activities must include performance and reporting of verification activities. How do you know it was effective? So this is key, and you don't wait for everybody who's responsible needs to know as much as they can know about the system and do the best they can to make sure that the system is effective. And then the auditor comes along as an independent set of eyes who may see things that that the departments don't see because they're just so close to it. But you can't just rely on everything being found wrong by the auditor. I did an audit one time where I was in a warehouse and it was really fairly dark, very dark actually. And I said to the person that was with me, I said, kind of dark in here. And he said, yeah, I know, but we'll have an audit at the end of the month and they'll write it up and fix it. That's what we call auditing compliance and that will not work for an effective system. The frequency must be done at planned intervals to ensure compliance and provide confirmation that the management system is effectively implemented and being maintained. We basically, we recommend for smaller audits more frequently, not just one giant audit once a year, but basically the audit frequency must be based on risk. And we recommend, again, process audits that do different elements at once, and it helps to maintain the system. Audit program challenges. It's tough to get effective training. You want to make sure you have effective training. Monitor the performance of the auditors, writing the findings correctly. They don't have to find everything that went wrong. It's going to be a snapshot in time. But we have to be able to describe the problems based on facts, because we can't expect someone to fix something if they don't understand the problem. We maintain the effective schedule that fulfills the requirements of the standard of choice. Perform the effective audits, ensuring the presence of a guide. I feel so strongly that you should always have a representative of the area. You've got to have a representative of the area seeing what the auditor sees. It's a good learning tool and it helps follow up for compliance. It's just critical. To me, if you don't have a guide or representative from the area, then you should not even do the audit, because the auditors are independent of the area. They'll write up things and then the guide or the management will say, well, you didn't look in the right place. Well, you'd look in the right place if you had a guide. But I only have limited time on this, this presentation, so I could talk about a guide at another time, but trust me, I could go on for a long time about why you should never do an audit if you don't have a representative from the area. As part of the audit follow-up, you can also ensure that corrective actions that have been previously identified, whether through an audit or through other internal means, are confirmed effective. Your corrective and preventive action program, or known as CAPA, you must ensure that corrective action is taken, including that you identify the problem, you clearly define what the problem is, then you do an effective root cause analysis. You may have to eliminate the causes of the nonconformance to prevent recurrence right away, short term, and then long term, you might have to do something additional. But you must define an effective fix to be applied in a timely manner based on the potential risk of the situation. Once it's completed, then you'll monitor it after enough time has gone by to have enough of a sample to be able to record the effectiveness. If the finding was a record that is not completed properly, and the record is done daily, then maybe after 3 or 4 months, you could have enough information to tell if it's effective. But if it's a record that's only done quarterly, then you're gonna have to wait and allow enough time so that you have enough evidence to know that it was effective. Sources of corrective actions are from just about anywhere, but could include customer complaints, any system or product nonconformities, any trend analysis. It's good to trend GMP findings, good to trend pest control findings, see if there's any kind of a trend that's identified that needs to be addressed. Complex root cause and isolation, development, application, and recording of actions from regulatory or system requirements, new or revised regulatory and system requirements, and so forth. Preventive actions are detecting, analyzing, eliminating potential nonconformities. So this is what we do when we see that something could happen and we're going to fix it before it does happen. You know, you could have bald tires, or preventive action would be to buy new tires before you kill yourself or you're on the side of the road with flat tires. If you wait and your tires all go, when you have a blowout or something, then how did that happen? The cause was, well, you weren't paying attention to the tires, I guess. So requirements must be defined for the following: identify potential nonconformity and causes, evaluate the need for action, determine and implement the preventive action, record results of actions taken, and confirm effectiveness of actions taken. Communication. Having effective communication both externally and internally are key. External communication can include suppliers, contractors, customers, and consumers. What we formally communicate would be product information, contracts, or any issues with order handling, customer complaints, or answers to frequently asked questions, regulatory and statutory requirements, and of course, you may want to include communication of your mission or food safety policy statement and your measurable goals. Internal communication is throughout the ranks. Now we're getting more and more into the terminology of internal and external customers, and asking folks within a process, do you know who your internal customer is? It's probably the next person. For instance, if you're packaging, it's probably your internal customer is probably the warehousing and shipping, because you have to get your product done in spec and out to them on time. If you're in a laboratory, your internal customer could be whoever you're running tests from or for. But it's a concept that's been getting more and more attention, that people within an operation understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. So internal communication, according to this slide, talks about management's responsibility to be sure that it's communicated. And a key part of the food safety program is to be sure that you communicate any changes, especially to the food safety team. And you evaluate these changes to see, will they affect our program? Will they affect our system overall? Will they affect our food safety or our HACCP program? Change management is huge of an effective program, and these slides go into detail as to what we consider as a change. So many times we'll get asked, so what is a change? Is it modification of new products? Is it a new product? Modifications of existing products? Is it something changing with the raw materials? Changing the ingredients, altering, how much or which ones we use? Anything in the process, production line relocation or development, moving equipment, getting new equipment, changing the environment. The list goes on, changing cleaning processes, changing cleaning chemicals, sanitation methods, packaging changing. We see a lot out in the store where packages continue to change. Sometimes I wonder what the engineering went into to change these. Storage parameters, systems for distribution, qualification for workers in the process, and so forth, and even more. Information on relevant food safety hazards. Know your industry. If someone else within your industry is having an issue, you might want to know about it, and you want to see how could it relate to what you're doing. And the list continues. All the information also would be included as an input to your management review that a change is coming up, and have evidence. Could it really affect our food safety or our process overall? And if so, how, and how are we going to adjust for that? Education is essential. You hear a lot of talking about competency. You hear a lot of talking about training. I like to use the term education. Anybody that's ever heard me talk or been in a lot of my classes know that I use the example of Pavlov's dogs. You ring a bell and they come. That's kind of training. Educating is really understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it and what effect it has on everything. Ask the question, how many lives do you touch each day? It's amazing when you think about it. I know if you think of one tanker of concentrated orange juice, the tanker could hold as much as 6,000 gallons, 128 ounces in a gallon. So you take 6,000 times 128 ounces and divide it by 8 ounces, which is a single serving. That's a lot of lives. And some processors will fill 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or even 30 tankers a day. So that's a lot. And so maybe this is a great training tool if you look at your process and how fast it runs, and or how much you actually produce. Make a 50-pound bag of dog food and you can make 1,000 of them in a minute. That's a lot of lives you can touch. It's important to develop an education program that is presented to all employees, including management, representing all levels. Education involves problem-solving methods, and sometimes people will say training's a Band-Aid. Just hurry up and train. Here, read this book, and now you go do it. But I tell people, if I read 5 books on brain surgery and I passed 100, and I got 100% on every quiz or exam I ever took related to brain surgery, are you really gonna let me cut open your brain until I have demonstrated that I have the skills to do it? And don't forget contract or temporary associates. A lot of companies are using more and more of temporary associates. Be sure that they are trained and they understand your policy and that records of training are kept. Manage your temporary agencies or your contract companies as approved supplier through your approved supplier program, so you have records of what you did to evaluate them and how you continually monitor their effectiveness. Purchasing and supplier management. I personally think that supplier programs are one of the weakest links in our food supply today. It's important to understand where we're getting our supplies from, what type of systems that they have. We have to have assurance that we're not bringing in hazards, or that if it says pasteurized, it's pasteurized. It's very, very important that we verify that our suppliers are doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to produce the product as we need it and in compliance. Supplier approval, selection and management of suppliers is really important, that you define this process. What are your suppliers approved for, and how do you monitor them? And you monitor them if there's any issues or potential risk to the final product. How do you ensure that that's in control? And what are the records to prove that? If you don't have a record, then you didn't do it. And this carries, of course, over to receiving ingredients and packaging, making sure that delivery vehicles are checked prior to and unloading to verify that they are clean and that there's no worries about dirty or holes in them, free of infestation. Temperature records exist. Materials must be inspected, tested, or covered by a C of A. Depending on the risk, you really need to look at your ingredients and your materials that you get into your facility and that you use, and determine if there are any of high risk, and if there are, how you're controlling that, and record your method of verification and have evidence that you've done it. Validation, it's a term that's used throughout many management systems. As written, effectively, it's the statement and definition or how this applies to your system is the management system as written effectively controls all your hazards. And you verify it by making sure you do what you say you do. Verification, food safety team is responsible for evaluating results of verification activities. And this could be by examining or adjusting your current procedures, your food safety, your HACCP program, how you communicate, what control measures you use. So the food safety team has a key responsibility, and it's up to you as an individual processor to understand how that relates to your particular product and your particular operation. And also now with the new rules from FSMA, that there's with the PCQI for human food and the PCQI for animal food and the other 5 regs, even including the one for food defense, food fraud, sanitary transportation. It really is quite encompassing. Why verify? You must ensure that the management system is working as planned, determine that all standard requirements have been met, determine if the system updates are required, determine if improvements can be made, visualize trends towards failure, assist in planning internal audits on the basis of importance and status of aspects to be audited, and confirm the effectiveness of the corrections and corrective actions that are performed. Must control non-conforming products is a must. A lot of companies have one, but they do not always define how that affects food safety or the safety of the product. So if there's a non-conformance related to food safety, it's key that that is separate and that you make sure that the product is not used and it is destroyed appropriately. There are other corrective actions, OPRPs, which relate to ISO 22000 and FSSC only. It's a term that is being used more and more, but basically we have to be sure that our corrective actions related to our food safety program have been effectively addressed. And this talks further about corrective actions and works with CCPs and your principle 5 of HACCP. It talks about pre-planned corrective action. This means that if the CCP is deviated from, the operator knows exactly what to do right now, so to protect against product getting out that could be unsafe. So have a procedure for control of non-conforming product is a must. You identify it, you investigate the root cause. Most non-conforming product issues are either handled through your corrective action system or your correction process. Then there's continuous improvement. An effective system continuously improves, basically is how to say it. And these can be sources that can be utilized to attain improvements and to measure the effectiveness of your food safety management system. And that would be, again, the corrective actions, your internal auditing, your management review, effective communication, effective individual verification, results, validating to make sure that you're controlling the hazards or the potential hazards that you are concerned about, and then updating your system as is required. So that really ends my presentation right now. If you have any questions.
Thanks, Debbie. This ends today's presentation. Have a great day.